Carper, would you yield to me for a minute or two, please?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks so much. As you may recall, Mr. Chairman, one of our colleagues, late Tom Colbert, and I worked for years on major changes in the Postal Service, real reforms. And we've done that. We've developed bipartisan consensus around that. And we can do that again. Among things that we've heard here today, there's an interest in Medicare integration. I think we ought to look at that. There's an acknowledgement that there need to be major investments in the fleet, the postal fleet. The average age of the fleet of postal vehicles, 27 years old. There are investments that need to be made for additional modern package processing equipment in our distribution centers across the country. And I think there's the ability to come up with a bipartisan consensus on how to help the Postal Service not just get through a pandemic, but be relevant and efficient and vibrant in the years to come. The secret to vibrant democracy, the two C's: communicate and compromise. And with all due respect to our Postmaster General, I'm pretty good at bipartisan compromise. I reached out to you when you were just initially selected by the Postal Board of Governors. And then later on, I tried to reach you again and again for weeks and couldn't even get a call back. And I wasn't the only one. You got to be willing to communicate. You got to be willing to communicate. There's some people in the administration who do a great job at that. Bob Lighthizer, a trade representative, is one. Mnuchin, Secretary of Treasury, is one. And I would urge you to emulate them. This is a shared responsibility. It's not on the post office. It's not on the men and women who work at the Postal Service. It's not on the Board of Governors or on you as a postmaster. It's on us as well. This is a shared responsibility. Our country is counting on us, and we're counting on a democracy. Last thing I'll mention, I go back to Ben Franklin, first Postmaster General. Remember what he said coming out of that building at the end of the Constitutional Convention when they said, "What have you done here? What have you created?" And he said, "A republic, if we can keep it. A republic, if we can keep it." And one of the keys to keeping it is, frankly, a vibrant postal service and the ability for people to vote, Democrat, Republican, or whatever, for people to cast their votes and know they're going to be counted. That's critical. We've got a president, sadly, who wants to undermine, underfund the Postal Service, and hopefully undermine the ability to vote by mail. That's just unacceptable. Hopefully we can do better than that. And I commit for myself, some of my colleagues to try to do just that. Do better. We can always do that. In order to form a more perfect union, we can do better.
Mr. Chairman, if I could say a few comments too, just briefly.
Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Postmaster DeJoy, I want to take an opportunity to thank you as well for appearing before us so willingly and certainly on very short notice. But I also want to be very clear about what I've been hearing, and I think you've heard from my members, and just to counter a little bit of what the chairman said. These are real concerns that I'm hearing. These are not manufactured. These are people who are coming forward, talking about delays, talking about medicine that's not available for them, talking about how I have this, I shared the story with an individual who did, because of the lack of medicine, skipped doses and was actually hospitalized. Those are very real. And when I hear those kinds of stories, we stand up. That's my job. It's a job of every senator here to stand up and for our constituents, for the people back home who are being hurt, and make sure that their voice is heard. That's what this is about. It's about making sure people's voices are heard. And that is what this hearing's about. This is why we're standing up and making sure the Postal Service does what they have done with incredible integrity and professionalism for 245 years. We want to make sure that that standard continues going forward. I fully appreciate that the COVID has created significant problems for the Postal Service, but I won't show my chart again. But if you look at the chart, the service was there through a lot of the pandemic. It's just been in the middle of July where you see it dropping off dramatically. The COVID's been with us since March, but we've seen a dramatic drop since mid-July, which is the time when I got all of those communications, and my colleagues have been getting those communications. They're not manufactured. These are real people.
Some of them certainly are.
So I just want to be clear about that. So, Mr. Postmaster Joy, you answered some of our questions today, and I thank you for that. But there's still many, many left that are unanswered, and I think we all look forward to seeing the documents that we have requested so we can do our oversight function, deliver to us in a timely fashion. I appreciate your willingness to do that. I'm going to continue my investigation of the recent delays and Postal Service practices that have been put in place. And I urge you and your staff to be fully forthcoming with any additional requests. That kind of transparency is critically important in this job. I know you have a very hard job. And frankly, I think you've made it harder on yourself because of the lack of transparency that we have seen here these last few weeks. So in the coming weeks, Congress certainly must provide Postal Service with the resources and the oversight that you need to reliably deliver mail for the American people, but not just through this election. We have to make sure we get through the election. We've got to get through the pandemic, and we want to make sure we put the Postal Service on sound financial footing to last for another 245 years and beyond. So thank you again, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Senator Peters. And again, I am in no way, shape, or form denying that many of these complaints are absolutely genuine, and we take these seriously and help our constituents. But there's also no doubt that a lot of this is being ginned up. Many of those complaints are highly scripted, and it's being done for political purpose. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about that. We have a new Postmaster General who's been in the office less than 70 days. You know, from my standpoint, I think the first thing he needed to do is get up, start the job, roll up his shirt sleeves, and get to work and try and figure out what he needs to do to reform the process. So I'm looking forward to a totally transparent process here. I'm looking to separate the fact from the fiction, and my problem is there's a lot of fiction, a lot of false narrative being ginned up by Democrats and the left right now. So I want the data as well. Mr. Postmaster General, I'm sure you will work with us in the future, and that's what I'm basically giving you the opportunity to do. There's a possibility for a postal reform bill, even in this next COVID relief package, if there is one. So let's work in good faith. Thank you again for your service. Thank the men and women of the United States Postal Service for their service as well. The hearing record will remain open for 15 days until September 3rd at 5 p.m. for the submission of statements and questions for the record. This hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.